Hey, and welcome to the Ambitious Bookkeeper Podcast. I'm Serena Shoup. I am a CPA and mom of three, and I'm running a virtual bookkeeping business mostly from my home. You're in the right place if you're a bookkeeper, accountant, or an accounting student, and you know that your purpose is bigger than sitting in a cubicle. If you're ready to learn some actionable tips and strategies to help you start and grow a bookkeeping or accounting business, I hope you stick around. All right, welcome back to the Ambitious Bookkeeper Podcast. I have a repeat guest, Michael King, on today. And if you have not heard the first episode we did together, you'll have to scroll way back, apparently, to a year and a half ago. Do you remember what episode number that was?
No, it was January of 2022, though.
Okay, so scroll way back to get the part one. I don't know if this is really going to be a part two, just more of like a conversation of what you're seeing now, how things are going, some changes that you've made, and all that good stuff. So if you want to introduce yourself for all of our new listeners that aren't aware of you.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Michael King. I am the CEO of KFE Solutions. We're a fractional CFO firm based in Dallas, Texas. I'm also the founder of the CFO Accelerator. In the CFO Accelerator, we work with accountants and fractional CFOs that are looking to start, scale, and optimize their advisory services. So that's me. That's what I do.
Awesome. So if you listened back a year and a half ago to our first episode, Michael was under the, I guess, umbrella or brand of the Connected Accountant. So do you want to talk about some of those changes you made?
Sure. Yeah, I think a lot of times, this is an interesting conversation, Serena, because I think a lot of times as an industry, we can tend to either underappreciate or overappreciate the importance of branding. I see a lot of extremes with it. In my case, we got, I don't know, about 18 months into the company, coaching, just sharing with people how to scale their firms. And I realized that the name, the Connected Accountant, really didn't speak to who we were talking to, what we were doing well enough. It was causing a lot of confusion with people. And so we made the decision, I guess, back in October of last year to rebrand. And I will tell you, this is the first time I've rebranded, and it's a nightmare. It is a complete
it's a huge undertaking.
Nightmare. Yeah, to go through all the URL changes, the email changes, the website change, all the things to update. It's tremendously hard. But I also pointed out that sometimes our industry tends to over-index the importance of branding. And it's really interesting. I see a lot of people, especially when they're first getting started, putting an inordinate amount of time on things like websites and logos and brand kits and colors and all of those things. And, it's normally, kind of my hot take on it. It's normally a distraction, especially early on. A lot of people use that as an excuse to not do other things in their business, things that are a lot of times like harder that you need to be doing. So I always want to caution people when they in our industry, when they're thinking about websites and logos and all the branding stuff, make sure that that's really something you need to be focused on right now, and you're not letting that be a convenient distraction from doing the hard work, whatever that might be.
Yeah, procrastinating.
Procrastinating. Did you just come up with that?
No, I'm pretty sure I've heard that somewhere like a long time ago.
I'm going to own it. That's going to be a Mike King quote going forward.
Yeah. It's funny too, because I definitely did that a little bit at the beginning. And then for some reason, I kind of fell out of love with that branding. And now I'm starting to become drawn back to my original branding, which is a very interesting thing. But so, okay, maybe that was the one mistake that people were making that we couldn't remember.
It could be. I have no idea.
So that kind of like feeds into the conversation that we were going to have about marketing anyway, which is really interesting. So before we get into that though, one of the key things you said was that it was confusing people, right? The previous branding that you had. And I think that's a big piece of branding. So I would love for you to talk about like how you figured out it was confusing people.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I'm not good at very many things in life, right? I'm not this like super skilled person, but I'm really good at listening, especially to my audience. And I would get questions from people all the time, like, "Hey, is this?" You talk about a lot of like CFO stuff and advisory stuff, but is this for accountants? And or accountants would come here like, it's called the connected accountant, but you're talking about advisory stuff. Like I don't, is this for me?
Mm-hmm.
And in marketing, it's just such a cliche, but it's so true. When you confuse, you lose.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't bringing in any of the right people, and so just listening to people, listening critically, staying curious about the questions that we're getting asked and the kinds of people that are coming in. I said, wait a minute, we've got a problem here. There's a bit of a delta between, what we're trying to do and who we're trying to serve and the people we're attracting.
Is that something that you find with accountants and their branding as well?
It can be. Normally, gosh, there's so many thoughts on accountants and branding. It's such a weird space.
Yeah.
We don't like it, right? Like it's the marketing, branding, sales. It all just feels woo-woo and gross to so many of us in our industry. I would say the biggest disconnect when it comes to marketing and branding in with accountants or in our industry is it's too surface level. It doesn't connect with anybody in particular in any particular way. So think back, take the stereotypical accounting firm from 1994, right? Like just think about your mom or your dad's accounting firm. That doesn't sell today, right? It just doesn't resonate today. It's so important today to really connect your brand, your firm with certain people, with certain groups that you want to serve. And so I would say that, less so with accounting firms, kind of indexing that way. More of what I'm seeing is you're not talking about like who you serve, why you serve them, where your passions are. It's more of like, hey, we offer bookkeeping, tax prep, S corp elections, or whatever. It's just too features based and not enough values based or benefit kind of based. Does that? I don't think that really answers your question, but I think the gap in our industry is a little different than that.
I would agree with that. And I think part of it too has to like, I've worked with some other accountants that have been like, I'm attracting the wrong clients. I keep getting these type of clients that I don't like working with. And so that's why I kind of asked that question, because it's like when someone has that concern or that question, what can you tell them to not have that happen, right? Like,
Sure.
kind of go back to the foundations of like what it is you actually want, right?
Exactly. So when that comes up, now I see where your question's at. So when that comes up, I love to do a dry erase board exercise every time this comes up, where you're like, I'm attracting the wrong client. So I'm like, pause, time out. Let's block off 2 or 3 hours one morning when you're fresh. Okay. Like no calls, no emails before. And get on your dry erase board. If you don't have a dry erase board, use pen and paper, but really critically think, ask yourself, what about these clients is wrong?
Yeah.
A lot of times we feel this tension that we're not working with the right people, but we don't really pause to ask ourselves, what about them is wrong for us? And it can be a whole litany of things, Serena. So as an example, it could be, I'm attracting clients from the wrong industry. Maybe I'm getting a lot of coaches or course creators, but I really want to work with lawyers, right? But I keep on attracting these folks. So it could be the wrong industry. It could be the wrong size. Maybe you want to work with businesses that are 7 figures and above, but everybody that keeps coming to you is 250K or less. It could be that you're attracting clients that are out of alignment with your values. It can be all these different things. And I think the first thing you do before you can troubleshoot is like really just start writing out what about these clients is wrong. And equally as important is the clients that you have, and let's hope you've got some that you like. What are the things about them that really excite you, that really fire you up? And be intentional about listing those out too.
Yeah.
So I'd say start by really listing those things out, both of them. I love a dry erase board, right? Then go back to the language that you use the imagery that you use, the photos that you use, the places that you're showing up, and ask yourself, am I showing up in those places using the right words, wearing the right clothes, saying the right things that's going to attract those people that I do want to attract?
Yeah.
Normally, that's where the gap is.
Yeah.
Right? You're fishing in the wrong pond, you're using the wrong bait, you're using the wrong fishing pole. And so you're catching things that you don't necessarily want.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point, because I think people get caught up in this whole branding thing and what are the other bookkeepers around me or accountants doing, and how are they getting clients? And so there's a lot of like, let me just mimic what other people are doing and hire this marketing firm that will, do the social media for me. But then it's like they're posting in places that your ideal client's not going to be. Right.
Yeah, I was talking to my mastermind, recently about this. And I said, look, if you want to attract, as an example, I think the person I was talking to was like multiple 7-figure lawyers. And I said, you got to quit posting on Instagram.
Yeah.
The managing partners of large law firms, they're not hanging out in IG reels. They're just not, and go get on LinkedIn. But I also think there's other channels, there's other ways to market. I think, one of the other misconceptions I see, Serena, is so often we think marketing, our heads go straight to social media. Our heads go straight to Facebook ads, right? Or TikTok or whatever, LinkedIn. There are other marketing channels out there that don't include social media. Yeah. I think the reality is, in a lot of cases, if not the majority of the cases, in this example, you want to work with larger businesses, those other marketing channels are oftentimes better than social media. So, I would challenge people, like, don't put the blinders on. There's a lot more to marketing than just social media.
Yeah, I would agree. A couple weeks ago, I had an episode, or I don't know, by the time this airs, a couple months ago, I had an episode with someone and we talked about LinkedIn and relationship marketing and things like that. So like you said, a lot of the type of clients that you do want to work with, you have to think like the person who's leading that business, the decision maker, and where they're at and what they're paying attention to. They're, like you said, they're not going to be on Instagram, but they probably have relationships with other people that would be able to refer you, or maybe they're going to be at certain events or networking things, right? So you really have to think out of the box there, and just really, like, it starts with who you want to attract, who's the key decision maker in that type of business, and where is that person going to be?
Yeah, you hit on a couple great ones there, Serena. I don't see enough people talking about. One of the things that's working really well for my firm right now is what I call partnerships. So my firm tends to work with like blue collar service based businesses. So think movers, roofers, electricians, construction, those kind of folks. And what we found is, hey, let's go partner with other people that serve that industry. So let's take the roofers as an example. I found a guy that runs a co-op for roofers, and what he does is he gets movers to join his yearly program, and then he goes out on their behalf and buys or comes up with agreements for raw material suppliers for roofers. And so they're kind of buying in bulk on behalf of these roofers. And so they get, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% off. Well, the guy that runs this co-op has a vested interest in the roofers being financially successful, because the more supplies that they buy, the more kickback he gets and the more savings they all get. So he has me come in once a quarter now and talk about things like cash flow forecasting, like projections, like tax strategies, like goals, right? So now all of a sudden I'm in front of this audience of people. They're there because they're interested in growing their business. He's already vetted them for me. Yeah. They're all really interested in this stuff. And so I speak for 2 hours with a Q&A once a quarter to these folks, and they get to see me teach. They get to interact with me. They get to visualize what it's like to work with me, how I answer their questions. And all of a sudden, we've got 4, 5, 6 leads coming in, very hot leads off of 1 2-hour presentation that had nothing to do with social media. So there's a lot of other opportunities outside of TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn even.
Yeah. That is definitely a hurdle for a lot of accountants, because they're like, oh no, I'm not getting up in front of people to speak. So get yourself a speaking coach. I did it. You can do it.
It's reps, but there's other things that you can do as well. Another example that's on our strategy board for this year, and again, we're strictly advisory, right? So we're not doing any type of accounting, but the same thing can work for you in a similar way. We've got a list of CPAs and accounting firms in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I'm in Dallas. We got a list, and somebody on our team went and looked for all these firms that don't offer advisory services. So, hey, let's reach out to them and create relationships with them so that as they get people that are coming in asking for help with things like tax strategies or, the cash flow forecast, the projections, goal setting, financial strategies, they refer them to us. And when we have people locally that need accounting services, we refer them. So if you're not that type of person that wants to get on a webinar, you don't want to get on stage, or the thought of going to a networking event terrifies you, you could approach something like that where it's much more of a one-on-one casual conversation, relationship-based thing. So there's a lot of different ways you can skin the marketing cat.
Yeah, the marketing cat. I just picture this cat like holding up a billboard sign. I love your analogies. They're great.
Oh, I do.
Okay, so before we hit record, you talked about one of the major things that you're seeing, and this all kind of ties in together, I'm sure, but with the advisory firms and consultants that you've been working with when it comes to marketing. So do you want to dive in?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of firm owners, and we've got 120 something now, I think, inside of my inner circle program. So there's a lot, right? So I have a wide sample of firm owners that I work with on a daily basis. The big challenge that I see a lot of them facing right now is they've got their mindset around marketing off a little bit, right? What a lot of people do, and I used to do this too, if I'm being honest, what a lot of people do is you'll turn on the marketing engine, right? You're asking for referrals, you're on Upwork, you're going to the events, you're doing whatever your thing is to generate leads. And then you start ramping up your client load. And then you start freaking out. You're like, oh my gosh, I've got more business than I can handle right now. I don't know if I'm ready to hire. And so you turn off the nozzle for the marketing engine. You handle the clients, you get them onboarded, or you complete the projects, whatever the case may be. And now you very quickly go into this mode of, oh my gosh, I have no business. What am I going to do? So you ramp up the marketing again. But the reality is it takes 2 or 3, sometimes 4 months for that marketing engine to really kick back into gear. So you've gone from this period of like no clients or not enough clients to you can't handle them. Now you're in this, famine realm again, back up here. And so it's this cyclical thing where it's marketing on, marketing off, too many customers, not enough customers. But what happens is this becomes unsustainable. You can't grow a business. You can't scale a business when you're always in like abundance or famine mode, or overabundance and famine mode, because you're either putting out fires or you're desperate for the next sale. So I think a lot of people need to recognize is you've got to keep that marketing machine going, even when you've got enough or too many clients, and just be okay with telling people like, look, we're not taking on new clients right now, but we will in a month or 2 months or 3 months. Just be okay telling them no. It's so much easier to start accepting people than to reboot the entire marketing machine that you have.
That's so true. So can you elaborate more on like maybe just take an example, because it really like we just talked about, it really depends on who you're trying to attract, what your marketing machine is going to be. So if you want to like walk through an example of one, what would that look like?
Sure. So, we'll stick with lawyers. We'll go lawyers, and I'll also hit on professional services because that's kind of where I'm at. So just to give some different flavors. So let's say that you want to work with lawyers as an example. Lawyers love a good happy hour. They love a good networking event. They find a lot of businesses at those things. So you might commit to attending one, networking event for lawyers a month, or maybe one a quarter. I think one a month, like you got to kind of stay in the game, stay in front of people. Yeah. There's a million of them out there, even in smaller cities. So find those networking events where you can go and just kind of stay in front of people. You could also go on podcasts. There's so many podcasts for whatever industry you could think of out there.
Yeah.
So maybe you want to be on podcasts, but just do those little things to kind of to stay warm, to stay in front of fresh eyes, to keep those leads kind of coming in. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. With the blue collar businesses we like working with, they're not as heavy into networking events. They're not as heavy into podcasts, but they love industry gatherings, where they can find savings on things, or,
Like
they
trade
can
show.
Trade shows is that's a great one. Trade shows are really good ones. They love going to events. Like I spoke at an event last year called Moving Mastery, right? I got in front of 500 movers, right? And I'm just talking to movers about cash flow forecasting. There's 500 ideal clients in there for me. I spoke at that one, but I didn't need to. Isn't it? Like, if you're not into speaking, you can just go and meet people.
Yeah.
So you find one of those or two of those a year to go to, right? So just find those little ways to stay connected with your audience, to hear what's going on in their industry. To, even if you're not getting business cards, so to speak, just to stay connected with the industry and what's going on. Because again, if you go ghost for 4 months and you try to get back in the game, it's going to be hard. It really is going to be hard.
Yeah. And like just continuing to stay in the game, it's good for your own momentum too, not just for getting clients, but it's like, if it, like you talk about putting in the reps, like an object in motion stays in motion type of situation. So
it is. And nothing will give you more confidence, more swag, than reps, than putting in the work. So, just go talk to a couple of people, if, 2 or 3 people, if that's where your comfort zone is, but you'll get better. You'll get more comfortable. You'll get more confident over time, but you're not going to get better. You're not going to get more comfortable. You're not going to get more confident over time if you're sitting on the sidelines, if you're, at home binging the latest season of The Fabulous Mrs. Maisel or whatever's on right now. Like that's not going to get your firm where you want it to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree.
Is it Marvel? It's probably Marvelous.
Marvelous. Yeah.
Okay, because the alliteration. Got it. Okay.
That's a good show. I haven't seen that. I haven't watched that in a couple of years, so I guess I need to catch up.
My wife watches it. No, easy pass for me.
Yeah, I don't do a lot of TV. So one of the questions that popped into my head earlier when you were talking, and I wanted to kind of wait to ask it.
Sure.
But what do you see the relationship between branding and positioning?
We'll be back after a quick break.
This episode of the Ambitious Bookkeeper Podcast is sponsored by my brand new free training, The Ultimate Guide to Creating a Profitable Bookkeeping Business. In just 1 hour, you will learn 3 keys to creating and launching a profitable bookkeeping business. We will map out your path to creating a bookkeeping or accounting business that keeps you in control of your time, priorities, and expertise. From someone who built a 6-figure firm on part-time hours. That's right. You can stay in control of your time, keep family as your priority, and serve your clients well. It just takes a little strategy up front, and I'm going to help you with that during this free training. So head over to the show notes to sign up now for the next training and find out how you can choose the work you do, kick imposter syndrome to the curb, use tech to be super efficient, which all leads to a profitable business. Just head on over to ambitiousbookkeeper.com/training, and I will see you there.
Branding and positioning. I think branding, and gosh, I am not a marketing guru. So there's probably someone listening to this. It's like, what did he just say? This is just kind of how I process it. Okay. Yeah. So you just start by saying I'm not a brander. When I think of branding, it's more around who I am or my firm is and what we represent. Positioning is more around where we want to be in the market.
Yeah.
Right. So branding to me is more like communicating my values, my perspectives, the types of services that we offer. Positioning is, hey, we're working with lawyers in Spokane, Washington that are between $3 and $10 million in revenue with one, there's, a single owner, it's not a group of managing partners, and we want to be working price wise, we're towards the higher end of what a firm would charge in that area. Like that to me is positioning. Like where do you show up in the marketplace and who are you working with? Branding is more about like who I am or who we are, what's our DNA.
Yeah, I like that.
Did I get it right? Did I do it right?
I mean, I don't know. That's why I asked, because it's like, can we put this in kind of like what we try to do for our clients is take what we know and make it like, put it in their words and their language. So having another successful accountant or CFO advisory firm be able to articulate the way they interpret something so that the rest of us can understand, I think is a really valuable thing to have.
Sure. So I'll give you, let's take that. Let's assume those definitions are correct. And you know what? They're correct for us. Good. Let's take those. And then I'll tell you from a branding and a positioning perspective where my firm lands. And I'd love to hear this for yours too. Does that sound good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So from a branding perspective, right, we offer fractional CFO services. I've already talked about, kind of who we serve. But for us, showing up with the heart of a teacher, very important. Servant leadership, very important. Professionalism, but not stuffy. Making sure that we always deliver multiple times the value that we charge is like, that's part of our core values is always deliver more value than we charge. Those things are really, really important to us as a firm. It's part of our DNA. We won't take on clients that don't embody those things as well.
Yeah.
Right. Now, from a positioning standpoint, we talk about the industry. We tend to be higher priced. We're at $8,000 a month now, right? So as fractional CFOs go, that tends to be a little bit, probably in the top 90%. Nope, top 10%. I got the backwards. We're probably in the top 10% of what fractional CFOs charge. We work with blue collar service-based businesses located in North America that use QuickBooks, sometimes Xero if I have to. I know how you feel about that. And now we're starting to, because we're working with larger clients, we're having to take on some NetSuite and Sage, accounting platforms as well. But that's kind of like our positioning with that. We're at the higher end of this industry or these industries. This is what we charge. What about you?
Yeah. So branding, I would say we really value learning and having clients that also are willing to learn, because a lot of like what you do, I mean, I don't say like heart of a teacher, but a lot of what we do is just educating our clients on what's happening with their numbers so that they can make better decisions going forward. And like the customer service aspect is really important, and growth for us professionally, personally, and for our clients as well. So that would be like our branding and our values type conversation. As far as positioning, we serve online course creators and experts. So coaches, consultants, kind of anyone that really is connected to that online business world. With some of them have a e-commerce component. And I would say our sweet spot is between 500,000 to $1 million or $2 million in revenue.
Awesome.
And we do provide bookkeeping, sales tax, financial reporting, and some advisory level type stuff. So budgeting, forecasting, things like that.
As you were sharing that, that's awesome. Can I give you an example of branding gone wrong?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a firm owner in my mastermind who was getting really burnt out with her client base. Okay. She is a no nonsense, does not mess around lady. Like I would not want to tick her off. Right. She's super sweet, but she doesn't mess around.
Yeah.
Right. And she's working with a lot of coaches, consultants, and course creators. And she's getting frustrated because she's like just super direct, like go do this, and profits will be this. And as you know, they don't like that. Like you got to massage it in. You got to use words like manifesting sometimes, right?
Yeah.
You can't just be so direct about it. And so I'm talking to her about it. And I said, have you ever worked with somebody that loves how direct you are? That like, they just value that. she pauses for a minute and she's like, yes, lawyers. And like, I'm like, I have this lawyers are like that, right? They don't like to beat around the bush. And so her branding,
out.
yeah. So she recognized, like, you know, that's who she is authentically. It would have been very unnatural for her to try to be more soft-spoken and less direct. And, you know, some of those tactics that you've got to employ to be able to really connect with more artistic people, more creative people. So she recognized, like, oh, I need to focus more on people that love that value that in me. And so she recognized that about her branding and then her positioning, right? She got her audience more aligned with that. So back to your initial question, like, she's like, I'm attracting the wrong people. You know, there's this tension there. So we got to redirect it. So it can be a monumental shift in your business if you are feeling those kinds of feels, you know, where like, they're not understanding me, they're not receiving what I'm telling them. Really go through this exercise and ask yourself that question, like, wait a minute, maybe I'm speaking to the wrong people here. Yeah,
that's so true. That's a good point. That's probably why I really like working with that industry, because I do consider myself more of a creative than a numbers person. And I think we've had that conversation before. And I've had to employ my own guardrails around my own finances because I have a creative personality. So it's like, I can really help people with that.
It's just so important to recognize that, right? So many people, like, they fight it.
Yeah.
Like, no, find someone that values that about you and that receives that well, that can resonate with you. But where I think a lot of people get stuck, or where the danger is they don't do anything and they just start burning out.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I don't feel heard. People aren't respecting what I'm telling them. They're not doing what I'm saying. There could be a reason for that beyond just what it is you're saying. It might just be that you're speaking to the wrong people.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the key point here is to be able to reflect on where things stand, you know, like having the ability to reflect and reevaluate things is a really great skill, and you're going to have to constantly do it. Like, I'm constantly reflecting and reevaluating our client base and our positioning and our marketing. And that's another thing I think that really scares accountants is I want it to be done, set in stone, and I never want to have to touch it again.
It's growth. It's just like anything else that grows in life. You know, go back to when you were 12 years old. I'm going to hit you with another metaphor here, since you said you like my metaphors. Go back to when you're 12, right? When we were 12 years old, we were like, man, if I just had, you know, if I could get a bigger allowance, all my problems would be solved. I'd be able to do all these things, right? And then one day you get a bigger allowance, and now your parents are like, well, now that you got more of an allowance, you've got to buy your own this and that and the other. And you're like, oh gosh, if I could just get a job, right? If I could get a job, all my problems would be solved because I get all this money. Then you get a job and you're like, oh my gosh, I have no free time anymore. You know, all my free times, if I could just go to college so that I could get a better job where I don't have to work all these hours, right? So the problem constantly changes. The problems, the priorities, the competing interests, they're always changing. And if you're not taking the time to really do some self-reflection and evaluation on where you're at, where you've been, and where you want to go, and do those things that you need to do to help you get there, you're going to get stuck in 12th grade, you know, so to speak. You're going to get stuck in a place that you just don't like. So, you know, I always say that ambition without a calendar sucks. You know, so we have on my calendar time to reflect on these things individually and as a team, where we talk about, just like you said, Serena, what's our client base looking like right now? Where are our pricing at? Do we need to be going for bigger clients, smaller clients? How about our scope of work? Is our scope of work still serving us and our clients well right now? You've got to ask those questions, or you just get stuck. But that's where growth comes from, is just adapting to you as a business owner as you grow and change.
Yeah, so good. Is there anything else that you wanted to chat about? I think this has been an amazing, I mean, of course you're like, well, let me see.
I'll throw one on you, like a total change of direction here that I'm actually a little guilty I didn't give you a heads up on.
Go for it.
All right, so let's talk about GPT-4 and ChatGPT.
Okay.
I'm curious to hear what's your early inclination on how that's going to impact the accounting industry in the next 12 to 24 months?
12 to 24 months. I think right now, I guess it just depends on who you follow and what they're saying and like how much you're absorbing of what's going on. But I have definitely seen a lot. It can affect any industry, especially when it comes to marketing. If you're not a good, strong writer and you have a hard time ideating, it's a really great tool. As far as like, I've tinkered with it a little bit to try to help me write newsletters, and the data that it returns is not always accurate. So I don't think a lot of accountants are going to put a lot of trust in it right now in the next maybe 12 months, but maybe, I don't know. I think as an industry, we're a little too skeptical to really dive in with it. But yeah, I don't know. What's your take?
I don't presume to have the crystal ball, right? So
Yeah.
this is Mike's opinion. So you get what you pay for. My concern isn't if our industry is going to take it seriously. My concern are the people that we're serving who don't know that the numbers are wrong. Are they going to take it seriously?
Yeah.
Are they going to say, why pay Serena X amount when I can look at some derivative of ChatGPT or GPT-4 that's got a different UI? There's even some already out there for, accountants now, for accounting AI. My worry is that the uneducated masses, like uneducated in the ways of accounting specifically, they're going to leverage it. And I think that if we're not on kind of the edge of talking about it as an industry and the dangers of it, if we're not like using it and showing, people love a good, HGTV before and after, right? Like, this is what GPT said about your tax return. This is the for reals, or then necessarily like yours, but show examples. I think we've got to really understand what are the limitations of it as it pertains to accounting, taxes, strategies, and we've got to educate the market on where it is, because that's who we're fighting, right? We're not fighting against ChatGPT. We're fighting against the market that's going to tell themselves, or the guy that's going to sell the $29 a month access to accountingai.com.io.gov. That's who we're competing against, right? And so I think we've got to lean into it more and talk about it more with our audience, which means we've got to get into it more. We've got to learn about it more so that we can educate people. Because my belief is, as a thought leader, we've got to proactively bring these topics up with our clients, or someone else is. And I don't want my clients to hear someone else's narrative or story about whatever. I want it to be mine.
That's so true.
So go ahead.
I was going to say, when you're talking about like, our problem is the like kind of the audience and how they're going to take it. It reminds me of the situation with all the TikTok advice, right? It's kind of the same thing. If you're not out there talking about how bad the TikTok advice is, then your clients are going to be listening to the TikTok advice. So it's like the same thing. It's funny that you brought this up, because I actually did exactly what you're saying to do. I tried to use ChatGPT to write my client newsletter, or my firm newsletter, right? Every month I send out a newsletter with all of the upcoming tax deadlines and things and stuff going on. And I asked ChatGPT to write me a newsletter with all of the upcoming tax deadlines, and they were so wrong. So I used that in my newsletter. I was like, I tried to use it,
That's awesome.
but it gave me the wrong dates. So here's the actual dates of what to be aware of, and here's what's actually happening. And hopefully you value the human touch, because that's what you get when you work with us. We are not robots.
Yeah, I think it's so important to just play with it like that for all of us, so that we can understand what the limitations are, and then we can talk about it. So even if when you get a client that comes to you and says, hey, what do you think about this? You have a story like, look, I'm testing it. I'm playing with it. I'm getting into it. I'm listening to Serena's podcast where they're talking about it, right? I'm doing all the right things. And there's some cool uses for it. But let me tell you, when it comes to your finances, these are the things. Here's 3 things that it's not doing well today. I'm going to stay on top of it, but I just want to make you aware that these are the 3 things or whatever that you've got to be careful of understanding kind of where it is and where it's going. Yeah. Don't, I'm going to double negative. Darn it. Don't not invest at least some time in researching these platforms. Don't be the guy that's still on, Microsoft Vista that refuses, like, AI is stupid. It's here. Whether it's good or not is a different question. It's here and it's not leaving. So I'd really encourage people, research it from time to time, play with it, get an account, log in, see how it works so that you can educate your clients on it.
Yeah. The other thing that I discovered from that too is, and this is where the fallout would happen with people trying to use it, is you have to know what kind of questions to ask to get the answer that you're trying to get. And it's literally the same thing when we're talking to clients. Like, we have to know what questions to ask them to get the information that we need. Right. So keep that in mind.
The video that I did for my event that's coming up in May, the CFO Accelerator Live, the entire script for that was written by ChatGPT. But version 1 of that script was horrible.
Trash.
Because I wasn't asking it the right questions.
Yeah.
Right. But after 3 or 4 or 5 different iterations, as I realized how I needed it to tweak it, then I got a really workable copy. I made, I don't know, half a dozen changes, small word tweaks that were more kind of in alignment with my voice. Mm-hmm. And that's what we ended up using. But I'm certain that it saved me a significant amount of time compared to me just sitting down with a blank slate and trying to write it out. So it has its uses.
Yeah, for sure.
It's important for us as professionals, especially thought leaders, to know what those uses and limitations are so that we can speak with authority to our clients on it. Yeah.
Love it. Well, thanks for throwing a curveball.
No problem. It just popped up, Chat
it's
GPT.
definitely being talked about a lot in certain areas and circles. So it's fun to kind of be able to contribute to that conversation. But yeah. So if someone wants to know more about the CFO Accelerator, what you have going on currently, where is the best place to connect with you?
Yeah. So I'm on all the socials, including TikTok, but you can find me at the CFO Accelerator, or you can check out the website, the CFOaccelerator.com. And I'd say if you're interested in advisory services, if you just want to learn more, I have a banger newsletter that goes out every single week. Yeah. The 5-Minute Fractional CFO. We've got, I think 1,300 subscribers now. A little bit of a humble brag. We've had less than 10 people unsubscribe ever out of 1,300, right? It's every week I give you an actionable tip on starting, scaling, or optimizing your advisory services. So I'd love for you to check that out. You can go to the CFOaccelerator.com/blog to get that in your inbox every Friday, absolutely free.
It is absolutely worth it. I read that one every week and I love it. I save them. I don't save a lot of newsletters, but I save those and I share them with the team, and they're super duper valuable. So thank you for taking the time to put those together and send them out. I appreciate it. Of course.
Thank you for having me today. I love chatting with you. This is great.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Thank you to everyone who helps make this podcast possible. Content and interviews are produced by me, Serena Shu. Our intro and outro music is written and performed by my brother, Ian Gilliam. Editing is also by Ian using his awesome sound engineering skills along with Descript software. Hosting and publishing is by Buzzsprout, and you can check out the show notes for links to all of these amazing resources and resources mentioned in the episode.